Well, this was definitely a jam-packed episode of Dragon Ball Super. And to dive deeper into this review, alright guys, it is Qaaman here today giving you my episode 85 review of Dragon Ball Super. And there's a lot of stuff we have to talk about today. So, let's start off with the good things that this episode did. One thing that I felt really made this episode unique is it added a lot of flavor and personality towards the Supreme Kais. For example, as we've seen in Dragon Ball before, we've always seen like all of these characters having groups, but it was really unique to see the Supreme Kais kind of getting together and having a conversation. As we saw at the beginning of the episode, the 8 Kais that are obviously going to be involved in the actual Tournament of Power. So that was one initial thing I liked. And in addition to that, I also like how when they were talking, they were discussing how they didn't want to tell the inhabitants of all of their respective universes about Zeno's decision to pretty much erase and nuke their universe if they were to lose the Tournament of Power. And obviously that would make sense because, you know, in a way that can kind of cause people to panic. But as I've said before, I'm kind of against all of this stuff. And I was talking to some of the other Dragon Ball YouTubers about this because I felt that if you tell people what kind of stakes are actually on the line, I actually think that's going to motivate them to actually train and fight harder. So to me, I think it actually has the opposite effect of what the Supreme Kais were. But either way, it was also cool to see how they didn't invite Universe 7 to this discussion, obviously, because they feel like Universe 7 is responsible. And I really liked how Universe 7 is being portrayed as like this villain universe that's kind of being ousted by all of the other Kais, and also later on when we see the discussion amongst all of the gods of destruction. And to talk more about it, this whole Kai discussion was really cool because it had this weird thing where you see like all of the different fighters on like these interesting ball-like screens, and I think that was kind of a cool technological feel that they added to it to make that definitely feel like it was different or in another realm. So that was some interesting things I felt about that discussion. And when we move back to Earth, Goku and Gohan want to train, and when I saw Fat Buu, the immediate thing I kind of thought to myself was, Fat Buu now looks like Super Buu, but with his own eyes. And it was cool to see him and Goku get into like a little sparring match. Obviously, as we've known the formula for Dragon Ball right now, Goku is clearly holding back as he was only fighting him in his base form. But it was cool to see how Buu is like now transitioning the way he's going to fight, as he's no longer going to just try to turn people into candy or just kill them. Like, he's actually going to try to knock people out. And Goku was talking about how Buu is a fighting genius, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later with you guys, but that was interesting stuff. And it was also cool to see how Mr. Satan, you know, was obviously really concerned about what Universe 7 is going to do in the Tournament of Power, and how he was interested in seeing Buu getting back into it. But I think the true best part of this episode would have to be the whole sequence with the Pride Troopers, because this was probably the most unique sequence, and it was definitely, it had its own theme to it. So when we see Toppo, we see him coming back, he's wearing a suit and he's at a restaurant, and here we bump into Kazriel, and this character looks very similar in my opinion to M. Bison from the Street Fighter series, if you guys are familiar with that. And he's pretty much talking to him saying how, you have to obviously keep all of your composure and stuff, because, you know, people here look up to you in this universe and you look kind of down and stuff, and then they they have to go out to the universe to go fight their crime. And to me, this scene kind of reminded me a lot of One Punch Man, where the Draken are coming over, and he has this monster called Arachne, which I think is based on the name Arachne by just using linguistics. And as you see, this new character, this Beerus-like character, Dispo, is super quick and fast, and he's fighting against them. He's starting to lose, but then Toppo and Kazriel come over and they start, you know, obviously defeating this creature. And I thought it was really cool to see the teamwork being executed in this position. And it reminded me a lot of the Ginyu Force, but the difference this time would be the fact that these are actually good guys. So it's like they're adding, it's literally like you have a good Ginyu Force, kind of similar to like the Power Rangers and the Tokusentai from Japan, where you have like these corny ass heroes that are trying to save you. So you can only laugh at the silly things they do, but in reality they're actually helping people. And we see later on in the conversation that, you know, they want Jiren to come and actually help them out into that. And I felt that that was cool to see how, like, the Pride Troopers, they're literally like an organization that have, you know, multiple fighters all throughout the universe. It's not like they have like one base on one planet where they all fight. No, like, this is a legitimate organization that goes out and fights stuff in the universe. And it kind of makes you wonder, what if you had this in Universe 7 where you had Goku on, like, let's say Earth, and I'm just making this scenario up, but let's say you had a Vegeta and like a future Trunks, and then you had like Gohan, all living on different planets on different quadrants of the universe, and then they would, you know, train inhabitants on those planets to obviously defend the Earth, or not just the Earth but the entire universe as a whole. I think that would actually be very interesting, and I really like that concept that they're adding for Universe 11's characters. And, you know, in terms of this, it was also interesting to see that they actually killed Draken and the little robot-like creature with him, because to me, I feel like that kind of shows you the way the Marvel DC universe usually doesn't operate, where I was talking to Duct Tape about this, where they're willing to kill the enemy. They're not trying to send them to jail or just beat them up. No. They want to completely get rid of these characters, and not all Marvel and DC characters follow this logic, but they're not the typical goody two-shoes heroes that are going to beat you up and teach you a lesson. These guys are going to wipe your ass out. So that was one really cool thing I liked about the Pride Troopers. They got a good amount of development with such little amount of time. So that's all I really have to say for that. And for my major criticisms of this episode, I think it would mainly be the fact that the pacing seemed very poor. In terms of pacing, I feel like they tried to do so much that the episode didn't really have its own theme. It's kind of like, okay, we got to get ready for the Tournament of Power, so let Gohan go see Piccolo, let Goku spar with Buu and meet Mr. Satan, let Goku try to find out where 17 is, let's find out a little bit about the Pride Troopers, and, you know, let's try to get everybody kind of involved. And by doing all of that, it kind of hurts the flow of an episode if this is going to be a filler type content, because obviously this is a slice of life episode to prepare us for the actual tournament. And if this had actually been an episode all about the Pride Troopers, I think they could have done a lot more development and advancement instead of just squeezing in a cool, tight packed story over the course of 5 or 6 minutes. I think the pacing could have been significantly improved overall for this episode, and I really would have enjoyed to see just a little bit more about the Pride Troopers, and, you know, obviously making more episodes about the different things that are going on. Because if you really think about it, Goku didn't accomplish what he did anyways. He spent the whole episode thinking about what he was going to do with 17. At the end, he still had to ask for where he was with Dende anyway, so that was one thing I noticed. But overall, guys, I think for this episode, I think it was decent. I think they could have, you know, focused and made this episode more narrow to maybe 1 or 2 plot points going on instead of trying to make it too many things at once, because it was a little bit tricky to follow. I had to watch this episode 3 times. But overall, I thought this episode was solid, and for some quick discussion points that I want you guys to give me some feedback on, what do you guys think about Goku calling Buu a fighting genius, considering in Dragon Ball Z, Buu did a lot of really silly tactics throughout fights that you probably wouldn't really think of him as a brilliant fighter. He was just this character who could regenerate and was so powerful that you really couldn't do anything with him. In addition to that, what do you guys think about the whole aspect of Goku and how the gods were, and how Vados was saying that Goku is pretty much giving all of them a chance, because if it wasn't for Goku, all of the weaker universes would have been wiped out. To me, it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it's like, well, they were all going to be wiped out anyways, but Goku's giving them a chance to have one shot at surviving. Because even then, all of them are going to be wiped out anyways if Zeno continues to do what he does regardless. So, to me, that was kind of an interesting talking point. And overall, guys, let me know what you think about Dipso, the new Beerus-like characters. This is clearly showing that Beerus has his own race. It's not just a race of god destructions. He's actually his own people who actually have powers and techniques and stuff. And that pretty much sums up what I have to say about the episode. And for my preview analysis, I think it was an awesome preview for Android 17. From what we saw, there was a rare purple-like animal in it, and I'm sure that's going to be what 17 is going to be protecting from possible poachers in the episodes. We saw him beating some of them up, and as we see Goku meeting up with 17, they're going to be sparring. Goku's clearly going to test him for the tournament, but if 18 is going to go, there probably isn't really much 17 could add, you know, that 18 couldn't, considering it's kind of implied in the show that they're around the same power. But with everything else said, guys, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. Remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys, and I give this episode 4 stars.